All right.
Okay, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. Just as an FYI, the sessions are being recorded, so just know that. Here today we have Miss Natalia Hurt. She's an Extension Program Specialist with our Rural Student Success Initiative. She is going to be providing you information about understanding and completing the FAFSA. We do ask that everybody go ahead and mute and turn off their video at this time. That helps with our connectivity for all the participants. As we go along, if you have any questions, be sure and type that information in the chat. Also, you'll see in the chat link a registration check-in sheet, so to speak. So if you'll make sure you complete that before the session is over, so we'll have an accurate account of who all participated in today's session. It also enters you for a chance to win some of our door prizes. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Mrs. Hurt, and she will be starting her presentation at this time.
Thank you, Jana. Good morning, everyone. Sorry there's such a dull background behind me, but I'm still working from home, haven't made it into the office yet. So thank you for joining me this morning. Welcome to the Understanding and Completing the FAFSA presentation for LEAD. I know this is not how I envisioned delivering this, but I'm really excited to be able to bring this information to you all virtually. Like Janice said, my name is Natalia Hurt. I'm the Extension Program Specialist here in College Station for College Access and Success. I work mainly with the Rural Student Success Initiative. But before I came to Texas 4-H, I was a financial aid advisor for Texas A&M. So I wanted to pass on everything that I learned while working in the financial aid office to you guys in the hopes that it would help you when you come to complete the FAFSA. Trust me, it's not as scary as it seems. So today it's going to be a whole range of topics on what the definition of financial aid is, who's eligible for financial aid, what are educational related expenses, what types of financial aid are available to you. I want to clear up some myths that a lot of people have about financial aid and kind of give you an overview of the whole financial aid cycle, what documents are needed, and give you some tips and resources on how to complete the cycle, as well as, touch on special circumstances and what you guys can do now. So this picture was me entering the financial aid office and learning everything financial aid. So what is financial aid? Financial aid is money to help pay for college or career school. It includes grants, work study, loans, and scholarships to help make college or career school affordable. This is the definition provided by the Federal Office of Federal Student Aid, the federal office who is responsible for running the student loan programs at the federal level. The key word in there is help. So nowadays it is not money to fully fund your education, just kind of help your families make it affordable. So when I was working in the financial aid office, I would always get, the top question I would always get was, can I use my financial aid money to pay for this? Financial aid can be used to pay for any educational related expense. Educational related expenses are broken down into these categories: tuition and fees, housing and meals, books and supplies, transportation, and personal expenses. You may also see that financial aid can be used to pay for a new computer for going to school, as well as dependent care. But most students only use the top 5. One thing to note about financial related expenses is they will also be referred to as your student's cost of attendance. So anytime you hear cost of attendance, know that they are referring to these 5 components. I always tell students that once you get your cost of attendance, it's going to be this big, scary, $30,000 number a year that they're going to post out to you. Just know that some of these components can be tailored to your personal expenses to a certain extent. For example, a student who chooses the lowest dorm rent, the lowest costing dorm on campus and the lowest costing meal will not spend as much as the cost of attendance they were provided by the university on their award letter says that they're going to spend. So it's really important to kind of make a budget and know what your actual expenses are versus looking at the scary number on the award letter. So there's different types of financial aid. So both the federal and the state governments offer financial aid to their students. The federal government has different different eligibility requirements for their financial aid than the state does. For federal financial aid, you have to be a U.S. resident or U.S. citizen, U.S. legal resident or citizen. And then for the state, you just have to be considered a Texas resident. So one thing to note here is there's a misconception that ethnicity and your parents' legal status is used to determine your financial aid eligibility. Neither one of those are considered in awarding financial aid. Your eligibility is solely determined on you for as far as your citizenship status goes. There's three types of financial aid that both the federal and state governments offer. You'll hear it referred to as free, borrowed, and earned money. Your free money are your grants and your scholarships. That's money that does not have to be paid back upon graduation. You have borrowed money, which is your loans. And then you have earned money, which is work study. And you earn work study throughout the academic year like a paycheck. There's also need-based versus non-need-based financial aid. Need-based is you show financial need using the formula I'll show you here in a minute, versus non-need-based aid anybody's eligible for. There's also renewable and non-renewable. Not all financial aid awards that you receive your freshman year are going to be renewable. So you're really going to want to look at that and make sure you understand what your financial aid award package will look like going year to year. There's also student and parent financial aid. This you see mainly in the form of loans. There are student federal direct loans, and then there are parent federal direct loans, which are called Parent Plus loans. Definitely know which aid that you're accepting. And then there's also work study. So work study is a program that allows you to have a job while in college. It can be either on or off campus. You earn these financial aid funds like a paycheck. And the reason they are financial aid funds is because these job earnings are excluded from your FAFSA calculation the next year. So eligibility. Federal and state governments do, like I said, they do look at the eligibility of the student, not the eligibility, not the family. So you're looking at financial need. Now that's just citizenship, remember. So financial need takes the entire family's income situation into account. And to determine financial need, you take the cost of attendance that the college assigns you, and then you subtract your expected family contribution. Your expected family contribution will be calculated. It's a number calculated by the FAFSA using the federal methodology that can be found on the FAFSA's website. To determine your financial need. Now, one thing to note about the expected family contribution is it does not mean that that is the money that your family is expected to pay towards your college education. It's just a number that using the bare minimum financial picture that the FAFSA provides to the government, it's their best guess calculation on what your family could potentially apply towards your education. You also have to meet satisfactory academic progress. While you don't have to, be a straight A student, and financial aid is not awarded to a student with the highest GPA, some financial aids, and such as academic scholarships are, but a majority of the financial aid does not look at your GPA. But you do have to maintain what's called satisfactory academic progress. So you still have to make good grades, and you still have to show progress towards completing your degree. You also have to enroll in courses that count for your degree. Say you are say you're in an engineering field. Well, you can't go in and take, a political science course unless it's considered an elective. So you really want to work with your academic advisors and understand what your course schedule looks like and what your degree program looks like to ensure that you are always enrolling in courses that are counting towards your degree for financial aid. As the little GIF shows, for financial aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis. So the sooner you get your financial aid application into the college you're thinking about, the further ahead in line you are to receive those financial aid funds. Financial aid is awarded to schools from the federal and state governments based on an allotment. So once that allotment is exhausted, the school has no more funds for that particular aid program to award. You'll see that a lot of larger universities, the financial aid runs out fast. So you want to make sure you set yourself up to be one of the first ones in line for those aid funds. So here's some financial aid myths that I always had to address when I was a financial aid advisor. My parents make too much money to qualify for financial aid. This is a tricky one. There's really no income cutoff as far as qualifying for financial aid. Everyone who submits a FAFSA is awarded at least a federal unsubsidized loan. It's considered financial aid. It may not be the most desirable form of financial aid, but everyone is awarded at minimum a federal unsubsidized loan. The FAFSA takes many factors into consideration when calculating your expected family contribution. It looks at your household size, it looks at your year in college, it looks at your parents' basic overall, you and your parents' basic overall financial picture. Not only does the FAFSA look at applying for federal aid, it also looks at you applying for need-based scholarships and state financial aid. So even though you may not qualify for, let's say, a grant, you may qualify based on your expected family contribution. You may qualify for a need-based scholarship. Need looks at different things when you're talking about scholarships. You could demonstrate $1 worth of financial need and not qualify for a grant, but you would qualify for potentially a need-based scholarship when you submit your application. So always, always, always submit your application. You never know what the school may be able to award you. The second one is the FAFSA takes forever to fill out, and it's really hard to do. Not going to sugarcoat it. It can be if you're not prepared for it. Typically, if you're prepared, you have all the required documents you need, it takes less than 30 minutes to complete. The FAFSA on the mobile is, to me, the most user-friendly version of a way to complete the FAFSA. But as long as you have all your required documents, you'll sail through it in no time. Another one that I got from students a lot was, I didn't qualify for aid last year, so filling out the FAFSA is just a waste of time. This goes for the entire presentation that I'm giving today. Financial aid changes on a yearly basis. So what may hold true this year doesn't necessarily mean it's going to hold true next year. You always, always, always want to complete your FAFSA, and you always want to stay up to date on what the latest news is coming out of financial aid. So the FAFSA cycle, everyone that I've met as far as new students goes, assumes that completing the FAFSA is all you need to do. You're done. It's actually an entire cycle that both students and institutions of higher education play an active role in. And this cycle must be completed every year that you're enrolled in school in order to continue to receive financial aid funds. So the first step is to complete the FAFSA. That's what a student and family does. Then the second process is verification and processing. So both the student and the school play an active role in this part. The school will then send the student an award letter. And this is the part of the cycle where most students just stop. They think they're done. The award letter isn't the end. You have to accept the financial aid that you're awarded from each institution in order to continue the cycle. Once you accept your financial aid, everything will be set for disbursement, which means it'll be given to you, deposited into your school account. And then once it's deposited and it pays for tuition and fees, then you'll find your true balance of remaining. You'll either receive a refund or you'll see a payment that's due to the university. So the first step is completing the application. It's really good to know one application does all. So if you are a U.S. resident, a legal U.S. resident, and a Texas resident, you only need to complete the FAFSA. If you are a Texas resident only, then you'll need to complete what's called the TASFA, the Texas Application for State Aid. One application does all. If you do not need to complete both, you just need to make sure you're completing the right one. The FAFSA can be completed online or it can be completed on the mobile app. I personally prefer the mobile app. I think it's a more user-friendly platform than the desktop app, but you can do both. The TASFA can be found online at collegeforalltexans.com. College for All Texans is a website that the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board has developed to advertise all college-going information for residents of the state of Texas. It's a great website to check out, not just for financial aid, but for other information as well. Definitely make sure you have this bookmarked on your web browser. You can also get the TASFA on your college's website. Things with the TASFA are going to be changing a little bit now that the state legislature has determined that completing the FAFSA or TASFA or completing a financial aid application is going to be a graduation requirement. The state of Texas is looking to make this TASFA more readily accessible. So you may see a few changes coming up in the near future regarding the TASFA application, but you should always be able to access it at collegeforalltexans.com. Both of these applications open October 1st. Like I said, you want to complete your FAFSA pretty much as soon as they open. You definitely want to be the first in line to get those funds. So most families, when I help them log into the FAFSA the first time, this is their reaction. What is that? It can be intimidating. This is the required documentation that you're going to need to complete your FAFSA in that 30 minutes or less time frame. You're going to want to create an FSA ID. Well, you have to create an FSA ID, but you're going to want to create it before you begin to complete the FAFSA. So the FSA ID, you're going to need your name as it appears on your Social Security card, your Social Security number, an email that you will have access to throughout your time in college. So definitely do not use your high school email. Use a permanent email that you use. And then a cell phone, if possible. You definitely want to link your cell phone. That way, if you ever lock yourself out, it can just text you a code. Definitely keep all of this information private, but in a place that's easily accessible, because you will need this ID to complete the FAFSA each year you're in school. And both parents and students need this, need an FSA ID if they're going to complete the FAFSA. Only one parent does, though. So your parent can play eeny, meeny, miny, moe on who's going to be the lucky one to create an FSA ID. So once you create your FSA ID, you'll log into the FAFSA, whichever version you want to do. If you want to do the desktop version or the mobile app version. You'll need your social security card. You'll need your driver's license number if applicable. You'll need your 2 years prior tax information. So if you are a high school senior this year who's planning on enrolling in college in the fall of 2021, you will need your 2019 tax information. You'll also need records of any untaxed income, such as child support or veterans non-education benefits, in order to complete the FAFSA. You'll definitely want your W-2s as well. You'll also want a list of schools that you're applying to. You don't have to have the federal codes. There's a search function in there for each school's federal code, but you definitely want to have a list of schools that you know you need to search for when you get to that point in the FAFSA. My best recommendation, and it's the recommendation of the Department of Education as well, is to use the data retrieval tool that's located in the FAFSA. So data retrieval links your FAFSA to the IRS, and it will automatically import your most of your financial information directly from the IRS. You don't have to, use the figure out which line and which box and do the calculations that it's asking for. Data retrieval does all of that for you. Definitely highly recommend it. Using data retrieval also reduces your risk of being selected for verification. So some tips when completing the FAFSA. One of the main questions we got when completing the FAFSA was, who is my FAFSA parent? For students whose parents are, whose biological parents are married, both of your parents are your FAFSA parent. For students whose biological parents are divorced, it depends on which parent you spend 51% or more of your time with, and which parent provides you 51% or more of that support. If your biological parents are divorced and the parent that you spend 51% or more of the time with is remarried, then your FAFSA parent is considered married or remarried. This is a really tricky question on the FAFSA. I always recommend, if you have a unique circumstance within your family, work with your financial aid advisors at the schools that you are interested in to get their guidance on how to best answer that question to meet your needs. The next question we always got was, am I independent or dependent? There's a misconception that students who solely support themselves, no parent contribution, anything like that, they have a job, they pay for their living expenses, are considered independent. It's not necessarily the case for financial aid purposes in FAFSA. Typically, a student under the age of 24 will be considered dependent and require parent information on the FAFSA. There are some special circumstances where a student can be determined independent, as well as there are some dependency questions in the FAFSA that if you can answer yes to, then you will be considered independent. If you have a special circumstance that doesn't really apply in the dependency questions, but you don't really consider yourself dependent either, work with your school to get their guidance on whether or not you can be considered independent. The signature page as well. So for students whose parents are unable to obtain an FSA ID, typically, a parent doesn't have a social, or a parent was a victim of identity theft and everything is completely on lockdown, your parent does have the option of the signature page. So you can print out a page at the end of your FAFSA and have your parent sign it and mail it directly to the Department of Education. If your parent has to sign a signature page, complete your FAFSA as close to October 1 as possible and get that signature page mailed in. It does take the Department of Education quite a couple of weeks to process those signature pages. If you remember nothing from this presentation, please, please, please remember that knowing your priority deadline is key. The priority deadline is the deadline that institutions use to give priority consideration or first consideration to the students completing the FAFSA and awarding financial aid. So for Texas, it's generally January 15th. There are some schools in the state that use an earlier priority deadline. So know the priority deadline for your school. If you're applying out of state, there is a link on the Department of Education website that will show you the priority date for those out of state schools. But definitely, definitely, definitely know your priority deadline and get your application in before that deadline. It typically takes the Department of Education, they say they process your application within 24 hours, but it may take up to 48 hours for that processed information to reach your school. So if you complete your application on January 15th, say on the exact priority deadline, your school will not receive and process it for about 48 hours after that. So you're looking at the soonest your school would receive it would be January 6th, 17th, 18th-ish, and you would miss that priority deadline. So definitely, definitely, definitely do not procrastinate and know your deadlines. So for males, you are required to register for selective service. You can do that within the FAFSA. Males are eligible to register up to 3 months before their 18th birthday. So if you are not eligible to register for selective service when you complete the FAFSA, just select the box. They should be able to register you, but definitely follow up and make sure that you are registered for selective service to receive your aid funds. Work study, there's a question in the FAFSA that asks, do you want to be considered for work study? Even if you're not sure if you're going to have a job in college, always check yes. This is you saying, I want to be considered. You can, if you are awarded the work study funds, you can always decline them later, but this is the surefire way to make sure that your university or college looks at you to award work study funds. The FAFSA is always free. Never pay someone to complete your FAFSA. Always work with your school's financial aid office, your college or university's financial aid office if you need assistance. If you still have questions, I'm always available to help walk through those questions for you. I don't mind, but never, ever, ever pay for somebody to help you complete the FAFSA. Like I said, keep your FSA ID in a secure place. It does have your personal information on it, your social security number, your name, your date of birth. It can be used as an identity theft tool. So keep it in a secure place, but remember where you put it because updating or resetting your FAFSA password, your FSA ID password, literally can take an act of Congress to get it done. You have to jump through so many hoops, and sometimes they tell you it's impossible. You'll hear me say this a lot throughout this presentation. Always start checking your college or university's financial aid portal within 48 hours of you submitting your application, and get into the habit of checking that portal at least weekly. Some common mistakes that we've seen in completing the FAFSA is legal guardianship. Texas does not have true legal guardianship. They have conservatorship. So depending on how it's worded in your paperwork, you may not qualify to check yes to am I in the legal guardianship dependency question. That's okay. Work with your financial aid office to work through that process. Household size, make sure everyone is accounted for in the household size. A lot of parents leave out their additional student in college that's living on their own. If they're under the age of 24, they are still considered in your household if you are still, helping pay for tuition and things like that. Definitely make sure you have that accurate number. And parent income listed in both the student section and the parent section. Always be mindful of which section of the FAFSA you're logging into to make sure that the information is going into the correct spots. So that's the end of it, right? I completed my FAFSA, we're done. No, we're just getting started. The fun is just beginning. So here's what we can expect, what you can expect
So, you filled out the FAFSA. Now what? The information you submitted will be processed by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Federal Student Aid, and the colleges or career schools you listed will be notified so they can begin their process of awarding aid. The great thing about filling out the FAFSA online is that you can check its processing status immediately. This comes in handy when you're thinking, I wonder if it went through. Within a few days of filling out the FAFSA, you'll get your Student Aid Report, or SAR. You'll hear that abbreviation again, so just remember, your SAR is your Student Aid Report. Basically, it summarizes all of the information you submitted on the FAFSA. You can access your SAR online at fafsa.gov using your FSA ID, which is your username and password. Check your SAR for any mistakes. Then make corrections if you need to, but only if you estimated your tax information or provided incorrect information the day you filled out the FAFSA. On your SAR, you'll see reference to your EFC, or expected family contribution. This number is used to determine your eligibility for federal student aid. It doesn't mean you actually have to contribute that amount. The financial aid office at each college or career school you list on your FAFSA will receive your information. Each office will then use your FAFSA information to determine how much aid you can get at that school. It's possible that your college or career school may require you to verify the information you submitted on your FAFSA. If that happens, your school will tell you what you need to do. Once you're accepted into a college or career school, you'll get an award letter from a school's financial aid office that explains the aid being offered to you. We'd recommend comparing award letters from multiple schools. That way you can make the best decision for your situation. If you have any questions about your financial aid offer, contact the school's financial aid office. If your aid offer includes a federal loan and you're a first-time borrower, there are a few more steps before you get your loan. You'll need to complete entrance counseling and sign the Master Promissory Note, or MPN, which is your agreement to pay back the loan. Your school will provide you with the necessary information. So how do you get your money? Well, usually your grants and loans will be applied to tuition, fees, and other charges on your student account first. Then any leftover money is paid to you. Work-study funds are earned throughout the term. Remember, filling out the FAFSA is not a one-time thing. You must complete it every year you attend school. If you have questions or need more information, please visit studentaid.gov.
Okay, so that's a little overview of kind of what happens next. They can explain it so much better than I can in 3 minutes. So what do you need to know? They mentioned verification. So this next step is processing and verification. Verification is just kind of the Department of Education's way of quality checking of FAFSA. It's completely random. Even working in the financial aid office, they would never give us, any magic what they're looking for, any rhyme or reason. It's really just quality, quality assurance, data collection as far as how to make the FAFSA easier. But if you are selected, you do have to submit all of the documentation required. It can be as simple as loading your individual student aid report, or you're going to have to request actual tax documents. Like I said, if you use data retrieval, all of your information comes from the IRS, so you have a less likely chance of getting selected for verification than if you input the numbers on your own. So you will need to request a tax return transcript. When you request a transcript from the IRS, it'll give you two options, either an account transcript or return transcript. You definitely want to select return transcript. And you will need to submit your W-2 or wage and income transcripts. You'll also have to complete school-specific verification forms. If you amend your taxes, you're going to need to submit three things: your original tax return transcript that shows your tax return prior to the amendment, the 1040X, and then your actual 1040 and supporting documents for your amended return. You will not get a tax return transcript for your amended return. You just have to submit that 1040 and supporting documents. So this process takes time. You definitely want to start early. Verification is a stair-step process, so you have to complete one step before you get to the other. Definitely avoid making corrections to your FAFSA while you're in the verification process. Always contact your school's financial aid office with questions, and definitely get into the habit of checking your financial aid portal so you can see the status of your documents as you go through verification. So you got it processed, you're good to go by the school. The school will send you an award letter. So some tips for the award letter is they're typically received around spring break for incoming freshmen. Once again, check your financial aid portal. A lot of schools have gone from what they call snail mail, which is, mailing it to your permanent address, to just awarding that letter through your portal, through your financial aid portal. Verification must be completed in order to receive a letter. Definitely read over it carefully. The wording can vary, so know what it's saying. A lot of times the award letter will come with a definition of what those awards are. If you have any questions, you can always log on to College for All Texans or the Federal Student Aid website to get a better understanding of what awards are being offered to you. Definitely determine what's renewable and non-renewable, and always compare your financial aid offers. So what you're being awarded at one school, you may be getting more from another school. And determine your actual cost of attendance. This is where I told you the school will kind of give you an average cost of attendance. Know what your actual cost of attendance is to compare those awards. And ask if there's a competitive review process. A lot of schools, will have, if you apply to multiple schools, your top school isn't giving you the money that another comparable university is giving you. Ask admissions if there's a review process that you can go through to see if you can qualify for more financial aid. And this is a good time to have a conversation about budgeting. Like, what are your actual college expenses going to be? So here's the most important part besides completing the FAFSA, is accepting your financial aid. Financial aid cannot be dispersed to you until it is accepted. You always want to accept your free money first, so your grants and your scholarships. You also want to be aware of your acceptance deadlines. A lot of schools for scholarships will pose a deadline for you to accept. You definitely want to make sure you accept that aid before the deadline. Know the terms of the aid that you're accepting, your interest rates, what renewal requirements need to be if there are, if your aid is renewable. Your loans do not have to be accepted right away. You can basically accept your loans at any point in time during the academic year. Definitely, if you're looking at accepting loans, know responsible borrowing, practice responsible borrowing, borrow only what you need, and the statistics and the advice is, don't borrow a total overall of more than 40% of your starting salary, 40 to 60% of your starting salary. Complete all of the requirements that are necessary. So think about, for Texas Grant, you have to answer a little drug screening questionnaire. For loans, like the video said, you have to do entrance counseling, sign your master promissory note. For scholarships, you have to, a lot of times you'll have to send a thank you note to your donor. And once again, always check your financial aid portal. Make sure you're not missing anything. Make sure you're up to date on the best information. So at this point, once you've accepted your financial aid, everything should be set for disbursement. So this is where a lot of students in the first week of school come in and are in a panic. In order for your funds to disperse to you, you have to accept admissions, you have to enroll in courses that count towards your degree, and disbursement happens no earlier than 10 days before the first day of class. So make sure that you're paying attention to that when you're budgeting your funds. You may have to buy books and supplies before your financial aid hits. So you definitely want to make sure you have some money set aside to cover those upfront college expenses before your financial aid disperses. And it always pays tuition and fees first. Anything after that will be refunded to you. So refunds are payments. So refunds happen when you receive more financial aid than your student billing statement. It can be paid to you in a lump sum, or some universities disperse it out like a paycheck. So you have different dates throughout the semester where you get a piece of your refund. Make sure that you set up direct deposit. A lot of institutions have gone to depositing direct deposit. They don't mail you a paper check anymore. So make sure you set up direct deposit. So until next October, you're done. This process has to be completed each year that you're in school in order to receive financial aid. So there are some additional funding options that are available to students if they don't have enough financial aid to cover their needs. You can look at short-term loans offered by the school. Definitely look at student employment, scholarships outside the university. I cannot stress enough how important it is to apply for community scholarships, regional scholarships, national scholarships. Apply for as many scholarships as you possibly can. It's going to seem overwhelming and exhausting, and you're going to get tired of writing essays, but every little bit helps. Look at parent contribution. 529 plans are also available to help support that cost. The college access loan, so the state of Texas offers a financial aid loan to its residents called the college access loan, and is a last resort alternative in private loans. So that is my alarm to hurry up and finish. So life happens, and as we've seen with COVID-19, the struggle is real. You see news reports right now that we're in unprecedented unemployment rates, all that medical expenses coming out. There are special circumstances that a school can look at to adjust your financial aid, adjust your FAFSA, adjust the components of your FAFSA. It's called professional judgment, and each school has a little bit different process. The main premise is the same, but you'll want to work with each school to get that process done. So definitely, if life happens, I always tell students FAFSA is a snapshot in time. That snapshot that you did FAFSA may not be what reality is right now. Definitely work with your schools if you've experienced a special circumstance to work through that process. It is a long and lengthy process, so you want to get started on it as soon as possible. So what can you do now? So say you're not ready to, to apply for college, or, you're not a senior in high school yet, this doesn't apply. you can start planning now. So the FAFSA forecaster is a great tool to estimate as of right now what financial aid you would be eligible for. Like I said before, financial aid always changes. So each year you do your taxes, kind of log in and play with the FAFSA forecaster and see what financial aid you would be expected based on that year's taxes. Make sure you file taxes and know where your tax documents are. You know, if you're coming into 11th or 12th grade, you definitely want to make sure that you're filing the appropriate year's taxes and that you know where those documents are. Research your schools. This is a huge, huge one. Know the cost options so you can make your budget. Know what dorms are available and how much each dorm costs. Take a tour of the dorms, see which one you like better. Know the meal plans. Actually, you can always add to a meal plan. You just can't ever take away. Know your personal expenses cost. A lot of, I think when the year I left financial aid, the personal expenses budget was over $900 a month for a student. Say you don't want to spend $900 a month, you only want to spend $300 a month. Take that into consideration as well. Make a budget to know what your actual costs are going to be. And always, always, always stay informed on current financial aid news and updates. Every year, financial aid changes, whether it's interest rates, whether it's program eligibility, it's always changing. So always stay up to date with that. Always look at your school's financial aid website, the Department of Financial Aid website, and College for All Texans. And look into other financial aid options available as well. Start early. Look at a 529 plan. Know what you need to do to qualify for state, local, regional, national scholarships. Make yourself competitive. Definitely, definitely, definitely start all of this now. It's never, ever too soon to start doing any of this. So some face-to-face resources, I call them face-to-face, in-person, are definitely your higher education personnel. You definitely want to sit down with a financial aid advisor or a college recruiter to get your financial aid questions answered. They are, the gateway to everything financial aid. Some website resources. Here's the Office of Federal Student Aid. They will tell you everything you need to know about federal aid. College for All Texans will tell you everything you need to know about state aid. And then your college and university websites as well are good resources. And then always, if you want to stay up to date, these are the trusted social media resources. FAFSA on Twitter, at FAFSA, at USED.gov. Texas OnCourse is a good one to follow. The Texas Higher Education Board. Of course, AgriLife RSSI, we try and send out information as well, not only to our participating counties, but to everyone. Definitely watch the federal student aid videos on YouTube. They could probably explain stuff in a faster and clearer than I could right now. And Facebook, definitely follow the federal student aid Facebook page, Texas OnCourse, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Those are all really great social media resources and trusted social media resources to get your information from. Okay, I think I got saved enough time for questions. Does anyone have any questions? So I'm going to pause share.
Natalia, one of the questions that was in the chat says, what are the advantages and disadvantages of having the parent versus the student sign the loan?
Okay, so the advantages to the student signing the loan is there are, depending on which loan you have, You can qualify for income-based repayment. You can qualify right now for public servant loan forgiveness. So there are a few more programs that the student is eligible for versus the parent. Typically, parent loans have a higher interest rate. If you're looking at borrowing from the government, they do tend to have a higher interest rate than the student loan does. They do not have any income protection. They don't have any forgiveness options to them. So you definitely, and it helps build the student's credit. So if a student borrows while they're in school, those loan payments, even if they don't make any loan payments before they graduate, it will help establish the student's credit.
Another question is, how do they find local scholarships?
So definitely start with your county. Some counties have a county-wide scholarship. I know when I was in school, definitely look at, your local county fair. Your counselor should have access to all of the local scholarships that are available. Look at booster clubs, look at any extracurricular activity, Little League, softball, baseball, but definitely start with your counselor and see if there is a countywide application that you can apply for.
Another question is, what is the earliest they should get started?
Okay, so the earliest you should get started looking, just kind of the overall discovery of financial aid and what you're looking at is, now. It's never too soon to start planning, but as far as completing the FAFSA and completing all of the scholarships, October 1. I always tell students to expect frustration on October 1 because as soon as that application opens, everyone crashes the server. But definitely before Thanksgiving, you want to have your FAFSA in and start working on your college scholarship essays and things like that. I hope that answered the question. What else?
Another question that came in is, what percentage of student debt is on average covered with financial aid? And how do you plan for mishaps in your budget?
So the rule of thumb is it just depends. It's really hard to say. Every family situation is different. Every financial aid package is different. And that's why I always say, compare the financial aid award letters. I know a lot of students are on the news, talking about they have borrowed, over $200,000 on an undergraduate degree. I have no idea how they borrowed over $200,000 on an undergraduate degree. That's a lot of the components, especially the personal expense component, is one component that's already in the family's budget. So you don't really need to, add anything additional to it. Those expenses are already being covered. It's just really a family, each family is going to be different as far as how much percent of student loan or student aid is being utilized. As far as what to do for budget mishaps, definitely look, there's financial aid offices all across the country have emergency loans that you're eligible for. They have, all sorts of help. You just have to know how to ask it and when to ask it. But most of the budget mishaps are going to be in the form of loans. But definitely budget mishaps may qualify for a special circumstance that you may be able to adjust your FAFSA and get more aid for.
Okay, Natalia, I'm going to post a link right now into our chat. Those of you that would like to continue visiting with Natalia, I'm going to ask that she also join that room. It's called our Q&A room. So those of you that want to continue, she's going to move over into that room. You are welcome to jump over there as well and continue to ask questions. We don't want to cut off the dialogue. But at this time, we need to prepare for our next session that starts at 11.